Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest, reacting to some Toronto Raptors news. Kyle Lowry, NBA champion Kyle Lowry, 5-time All-Star, the leader in Toronto Raptors history. He has all the accolades, and he has been re-signed by the Toronto Raptors. Well, he's been given a contract extension. He was already under contract for this season. He was on the last year of that 3-year deal he signed back in 2017. He's getting paid $33 million this year, and now he's been extended. So the details of the contract, the details of the extension is a 1-year extension, getting paid $31 million in his 16th season, I believe. So this is huge news for the Toronto Raptors and their plan going forward, and obviously Kyle Lowry's tenure with the team. So we got a lot to break into because this, I think, surprised a lot of people. I don't think there's a lot of controversy in terms of Raptors fans. Some people are kind of worried that we're paying Kyle Lowry this much money at his age and his kind of injury history, and we can get into that later, but this was a genius, smart move by Masai because Kyle Lowry's a guy that you want to keep on this team. And, we made a video on Kyle Lowry last week talking about what it would probably take to extend him, and we were talking about that $30 million range for probably over 3 years. Paying Kyle Lowry $10-12 million over the course of 3-4 seasons. We thought that's what it would take to get Kyle, done. Get the deal done so he'd stay, he'd be happy, he'd be locked in with this Raptors team. But no, Masai Ujiri decides to pay 3 times the amount per year that we were expecting, but only at a 1-year scale. So all the money that we said we wanted to give Kyle Lowry, Masai Ujiri basically said, you know what, have it all up front. Have it in this year, because it seems like with this move, Masai Ujiri has a plan. He has a plan for this Toronto Raptors team, and we'll get straight into that right now, because next offseason, it's, the past 2-3 seasons, they've been really exciting with big-name free agents always coming off the board, and there's always a bunch of drama and all that sort of stuff. The NBA offseason has almost been good as the regular season. Some would say it's been more exciting, the offseason drama, because of all the big names switching. But next offseason, it's not going to be that good. There's not many big names coming off, their contracts next year. So even if the Toronto Raptors want to be big players in free agency, they probably weren't going to do it. That next year wasn't the summer that's going to occur. The 2021 offseason is when I think Masai Ujiri is going to be planning on fishing for big free agents, whether it's the superstars or just the all-around star players. Give the young guys, give our veterans that mix of crop of players the next 2 years to be good, be solid, see if they can surprise people, see if Siakam, Fred can take the next leap, see if guys like Terrence Davis, who looked really good in that first preseason game. I'm going to be getting into the preseason games, as we get a couple more under our belt, because it's hard to have a lot of takeaways from 1 or 2 preseason games. Everything's not gelling yet, but, see if one of those surprise players can come out of the woodwork and, really have an impact on this team. And then, as we have that winning culture in the same vein that the Clippers have been doing for the past 2 years after they blew it up with getting rid of Blake Griffin and Chris Paul, be good, and then see if we can add that Kawhi Leonard level talent in free agency maybe, or see if we can develop him on the Toronto Raptors and then build around that piece, whether Siakam can take that leap or maybe it's someone else. I think that's the strategy for Masai Ujiri going forward, and we want Kyle Lowry. I think the Toronto Raptors, by this move, show that they want Kyle Lowry on this team long term, and they want to, pay Kyle Lowry for all of the things that he's done for this team. But if we were to pay Kyle Lowry big money for the next few seasons, that would, especially with Siakam getting his extension coming up soon, Fred VanVleet's up to get paid after this season, Kyle Lowry's money on top of it would be tough to be able to go out and prove this roster. So if we pay Kyle Lowry during a season when there's probably not going to be a lot of players that we have to pay for, when we're not going to be big players in free agency, then that makes a lot of sense. That's strategic. That's some 4D chess from Masai Ujiri, and we didn't really think of that on the podcast, and obviously that's why Masai Ujiri is running the Raptors and we're not. So shout out Masai. I'm really happy with this deal. And now it looks like we're going to have Kyle Lowry locked in for definitely the next 2 seasons, but we're going to see if that's going to happen in the future. And before we get into his expectations and his role for this team in upcoming years, I want to kind of break down a bit more about what this means for the team, because a lot of people have been talking about this year, And maybe Masai's plan would be to see how it goes with Serge Ibaka, with Marc Gasol, with Kyle Lowry, see how things are going to be rocking out, and then if the team underperforms, if the young guys don't really step up, then maybe we could use those expiring contracts as trade assets. A big name player, a guy that's still productive, that's on a 1-year deal. That's a really attractive trade chip for those semi-contender teams that are looking for that one last piece to put them over the top. And Kyle Lowry is a name that I know a lot of the NBA TV shows and all the breakdowns in the American media, they're talking about, Kyle Lowry could be a guy if the Raptors struggle, that one of these teams that need one more piece to put them over the top could end up trading for Kyle Lowry to see what would occur. And I know Marc Gasol's been also thrown out there a lot. There's been a lot of talk about Jaylen Brown for Marc Gasol. I'll probably make a video on that in the future. Let us know in the comment section if you want that. But, Serge Ibaka, those are guys that could possibly be moved. I think with Kyle Lowry getting this extension, and we'll see what happens with Serge and Marc, but that takes him out of the conversation because the trade value for Kyle Lowry went down after this deal. 2 years of $30 million for a guy that's, 30, I keep bringing up his age. He's 33 right now. He's going to be 34 at the end of the year. 2 years, $30 million, that's going to be tough, especially with his production going, on a downward trajectory, and he is going to be eating up cap space for this next offseason. Kind of takes the Raptors out of contention for any players next year, so he doesn't have much trade value anymore, especially giving him this deal. It's very unlikely we're going to see Kyle Lowry moved, and that indicates that he's going to be with this team now for the future. And one of the biggest talking points for the Raptors this offseason has been what his role would be in the next few years if he were to stay, because Fred VanVleet's a guy that's showing he's a starting caliber point guard in this league. In the finals, he absolutely tore it up, so there's going to be some interesting dynamics, so to speak, between those two guys. And we've seen Terrence Davis show that he might be demanding some minutes, but he can play more off ball as well. But will Kyle Lowry be the starter for the next 2 years for the Toronto Raptors? Because he's getting $30 million. He's getting paid like not just a starter, but like an all-star, top-level guy. And as I've previously iterated, that's a good thing. I think that was a smart move for the Raptors. But, if we have kind of the Dwayne Casey, DeMarre Carroll syndrome, where a guy that's not at the same level he once was and got a big contract, but because he's getting paid super highly, there's an expectation for him to start. Remember that's what happened with DeMarre Carroll, and he was always our starting small forward, despite the fact, we have the DeMarre Carroll Gold Star Award, but he was just injured. That was the main reason he really struggled, and he really couldn't hit a three. So, it would have been smarter for Dwayne Casey to maybe rock with a PJ Tucker in the starting unit rather than DeMarre, or even a Norman Powell at that point, the way he was playing in that 2016 rookie campaign. So, will Kyle Lowry, even if he's not the top tier level talent he's been over past years, be the starter for this team because he has a big contract? Will Nick Nurse kind of look into that? That's something that's going to be really interesting going forward, because Fred VanVleet's up for a payday this offseason, so I think he has an expectation into his free agency to make sure he's getting a starting role. We've made a whole video on that, how he wants to be a starter in this league. Will Kyle Lowry, with this new big contract, be interested, be willing to take a backseat to Fred VanVleet, to be maybe he becomes the leader of the bench mob, and maybe halfway through the season after next year? It's going to be really interesting to see that dynamic, and I think Kyle Lowry knows that he's getting up there in age, he's entering the twilight of his career, and he wants to stay with the Toronto Raptors. I think after signing this deal, he knows that's something that's going to occur, that he's willing to accept, and he sees the development of Fred VanVleet, that he's going to accept that bench role at some point. But when that happens, if there's tension between those two guys, I think that's something we certainly have to look at for in this season. And we talked about Kyle Lowry's expectations in his game himself this year, and we've iterated on that a lot. We're probably going to iterate on that more in future videos. But the last talking point I want to say for this video is the kind of hate from some, not a lot of Raptors fans, but there's a group of Raptors fans that are frustrated, not just with this big contract, but Michael Grange, I think, made the report that Kyle Lowry was going to demand a trade if he wasn't extended by the Toronto Raptors, and he was going to demand a trade to a desired destination. And some people are a bit shook about that. And to what I say to that, Kyle Lowry brought a championship to the Toronto Raptors. He, some people will say it was all Kawhi, but that's silliness, that's foolishness. Kyle Lowry did a lot. He had some massive impact games. Without Kyle's performance, without Kyle and obviously DeMar DeRozan building this culture, building this team, we aren't even close to in a position to win a championship. Kyle Lowry deserved to get paid. He deserved to almost be treated as Toronto Raptors royalty without, Toronto sacrificing their whole entire future. And I think there was a perfect win-win situation for both camps in this extension. And if Kyle Lowry felt like the Toronto Raptors weren't really putting his best interests in mind, and after he's given all that he's given to the Toronto Raptors, they were willing to, throw him to the wayside and all that, I think it's fair for him to demand a trade, especially with what they did to DeMar DeRozan. To be fair, they gave up the heart and soul of this team to win and for the Raptors' best interest. And I don't think Kyle Lowry would want to be on a team that's not necessarily in championship contention right now and be underpaid despite the fact that he's a legend here and all that sort of stuff. So I think there shouldn't be frustration amongst Raptors media, amongst Raptors fans about Kyle Lowry being willing to hold out and demand a trade. He wasn't willing to sit out or anything. I know some people are mad he didn't play in those Tokyo preseason games, but he's recovering from injury. He said in all the media day interviews that he's still getting back in game shape. We don't want to overwork our 33-year-old point guard after he just went to the postseason, had a shortened summer, was training with USA, and is recovering from thumb surgery. I don't think that's a smart move. But anyways, let me know what you guys think about that. Let me know what you think about the contract extension in the comment section below. You're the best for making this far. Check out the Twitter, the Instagram, all that cool stuff. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.